Jesus Christ, Doc, you disintegrated Einstein.
Calm down, Marty. I didn't disintegrate anything.
Welcome to the Weird Film Facts channel. Today, we're going to take a trip back in time to explore Back to the Future, 1985, the classic time travel flick by director Robert Zemeckis and writer Bob Gale.
Never mind that now. Never mind that. Why, that's me.
While it might look like a wild, action-packed time travel adventure, behind the scenes, it's actually got tons of chaotic stories, rejections, and some of the weirdest behind-the-scenes moments you've probably never even heard about. Stand clear. The sparks are about to fly. Would you believe that Disney, of all companies, the famous family film studio, actually turned down the Back to the Future script? It's pretty wild to think about, especially since the movie feels so heartwarming and adventurous, right? But get this. Their reason for saying no was a shocker. They thought the story had a weird wrinkle. Specifically, they were super uncomfortable with Marty's own mom, Lorraine, accidentally falling for him back in 1955, calling it incestuous.
You know what I do in those situations?
What?
I don't worry.
They even went as far as to flat out say, "You guys have a movie about incest, and you're trying to pass it off as a family film." Luckily, Universal Studios saw a ton of potential in this unique story and ultimately jumped on the project. That dramatic no from Disney actually ended up being a huge turning point for the movie to find its real home. Just imagine a classic movie like Back to the Future having to go through such a crazy tough process before it even made it to audiences. The insane number of script drafts is just going to blow you away. This film didn't come together easily. It was the result of a 4-year-long battle full of frustrations and rewrites. Director Robert Zemeckis and writer Bob Gale had to go through at least 44 full drafts. Originally, a lot of ideas got tossed out, like the time machine being powered by Coca-Cola or a photo booth. Eventually, the story got streamlined. The DeLorean was brought in as the iconic time machine, and that unforgettable ending with the lightning strike at the clock tower was added. It's thanks to all this non-stop effort that the project finally got the green light and became the timeless masterpiece it is today. It's super hard to imagine Back to the Future without Christopher Lloyd as the quirky scientist Doc Brown, right? But believe it or not, that almost happened. When the offer came in, Lloyd was really tired and burnt out from acting roles. He even turned down the part without even reading the script, and word on the street is he actually threw the script in the trash because he was so fed up. Luckily, his wife picked up the script and convinced him to give it a read.
Is that a evil?
Never mind that now. Not now. I sent him into the future.
She thought the Doc Brown role could be a really special opportunity, and her persistence led to one of the most iconic performances in movie history. Lloyd's career and cinematic history changed all because of that one small act. Here's a real shocker. Michael J. Fox, the guy we can't separate from Marty McFly, wasn't the first choice for the role. In fact, filming had already been going on for 6 weeks without him. The original actor cast was Eric Stoltz. However, Stoltz played Marty way too seriously, using a method acting style where he stayed in character even when the cameras weren't rolling, which made things pretty tough for the crew. Even though Stoltz was a talented actor, director Robert Zemeckis had to face the truth. His acting style just didn't fit the comedic, adventurous tone of the movie. In the end, a costly and risky decision was made, replacing the lead actor mid-production.
Jesus Christ, Doc, you disintegrated Einstein.
Calm down, Marty. I didn't disintegrate anything.
After Michael J. Fox replaced Eric Stoltz, he had to deal with an absolutely brutal and unimaginable filming schedule. This was genuinely one of the toughest challenges of his career. To break down the schedule, Fox had to shoot his TV show, Family Ties, all day, often from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. Then, he'd drive straight to the Back to the Future set and keep shooting from 6 p.m. until 4 a.m. He survived those 18 to 20-hour workdays by relying on coffee and adrenaline. What's amazing is that even his signs of tiredness or exhaustion were kept in the movie, which somehow made the character of Marty incredibly authentic. This schedule really shows Fox's extraordinary dedication to this legendary role. Marty's girlfriend, Jennifer Parker, almost had a different face in the movie too. Initially, actress Melora Hardin was chosen to play Jennifer. However, she ended up being replaced for a reason that seems tiny but was actually considered important by the producers. Hardin was a few inches taller than Michael J. Fox, and the producers were worried that this height difference would be too obvious on screen, throwing off the balance of the main couple. This is a small detail, but it shows just how meticulous the production team was with every little thing during casting. In the end, Claudia Wells was chosen as the replacement and became the familiar face of Jennifer Parker in the first part of the trilogy.
It's like Doc.
Yeah, I know. If you put your mind to it, you can accomplish anything.
Crispen Glover, who played George McFly, was famous for his acting methods that went beyond weird and were sometimes controversial. He showed extreme dedication to his role, like staying in character as George even between takes, never breaking character. Glover also constantly argued with the director about the tiniest details related to his character, showing his tight control.
Well, actually, I figured since it wasn't due till Monday.
Hello? Hello? Anybody home?
The peak was when he insisted on actually hanging himself upside down for a shot, instead of using effects or a stunt double as the director wanted. His behavior and work style became so disruptive that he wasn't invited back for the sequels. Instead, the studio had to use makeup and a body double to recreate George McFly's image in later parts, which is proof of the internal conflicts behind the scenes. Even though the DeLorean became such a memorable icon, it was actually a real nightmare to shoot. Using it on set caused a ton of technical issues that gave the crew major headaches. The car's distinctive gull-wing doors kept getting stuck, often trapping the actors inside. At one point, the crew even had to use crowbars to pry the doors open every time an actor needed to get out. These difficulties added to the chaos behind the scenes of an already trouble-filled movie. However, in the end, all these problems were overcome with the persistence and creativity of the production team, helping the DeLorean fulfill its historic role on screen. One of the most iconic shots in Back to the Future, the two blazing tire tracks when the DeLorean hits 88 miles per hour, will surprise you when you find out how it was done. Unlike what many people think, this scene wasn't CGI or visual effects added later. Instead, the filmmakers created this effect in a super risky and practical way. They used fabric strips soaked in gasoline, placed them along the DeLorean's tire path. Then they lit them on fire and filmed the scene in real time, creating genuine flames. This really highlights the immense pressure and daring of the crew to create such a realistic and amazing shot that went down in movie history. Did you remember any moments in the movie that made you gasp when you first saw them? Leave a comment saying yes if you want to see more surprising facts like these. In the movie, there's a sudden violent scene that changes the tone when Doc gets shot down by Libyan terrorists. However, this scene almost didn't make it into the film. Universal Pictures executives expressed serious concerns about mentioning real-life terrorism in a fantasy movie. They thought it was too risky and could cause a lot of controversy. Despite that, director Robert Zemeckis insisted on keeping the scene. He believed that the scene where Doc is attacked and Marty has to figure out how to save him added the necessary urgency, challenge, and chaos to the story. Thanks to Zemeckis' persistence, a crucial and dramatic plot point was kept. The film's final climax, when lightning strikes the clock tower and sends Marty back to 1985, is one of the most iconic moments in movie history. However, shooting this scene was a real storm of technicality and complexity. It required a sophisticated combination of practical effects, miniatures, stunts, and especially split-second timing. Christopher Lloyd had to perform on wires in artificial rain, and the DeLorean had to hit 88 miles per hour exactly when the lightning struck. To get everything right, the crew had to shoot parts of this scene for over 3 months, constantly reshooting angles and layering effects in post-production. This was truly a classic trench warfare shoot, and the final result exceeded all expectations. Here's a weird fact about Doc Brown's time machine. Initially, it wasn't the famous DeLorean, but a bulky, stationary, lead-lined refrigerator. This original idea was totally different from what we saw on screen. According to an early script, the film's climax would involve Marty using an atomic bomb explosion in the Nevada desert to trigger the refrigerator's time jump. However, Steven Spielberg, the executive producer, flat out rejected the refrigerator idea. He wasn't just worried that it would slow down the film's pace and excitement, but also feared a potentially serious consequence. children might crawl into refrigerators and trap themselves while imitating the movie. This decision led to the birth of the iconic DeLorean. Even though Back to the Future has such an iconic and memorable title, Universal Pictures hated it. That sounds ridiculous, right? Sid Sheinberg, a Universal executive, suggested an alternative name that sounded very old school from the 50s. Spaceman from Pluto. He thought this name would be more appealing to audiences. However, Steven Spielberg, the film's executive producer, handled the situation brilliantly and cleverly. Instead of arguing, he just sent a short memo back to Sheinberg that read, "Thanks for the gag memo, Sid. We all had a big laugh." Spielberg's witty approach made Sheinberg awkwardly withdraw his suggestion, and the classic Back to the Future title was kept, affirming the creative team's vision. Doc Brown wasn't just some quirky character made up on a whim. He was actually built from real-life geniuses. This adds a whole new layer to this iconic character. One of the two main inspirations was the brilliant scientist Albert Einstein, with his characteristic wild hair and ceaseless manic energy. The second inspiration came from Leopold Stokowski, a famous conductor known for his dramatic flair and flamboyant gestures when leading an orchestra. Christopher Lloyd borrowed these characteristics from both individuals to create Doc's distinctive demeanor and exaggerated style. This unique combination resulted in a larger-than-life character, a mad scientist we both love and revere. One question the movie never really explained was, how did Doc and Marty become friends? This was a gap that many fans were curious about. The surprising answer was hidden in the Back to the Future Untold Tales #1 comic book, released in 2015. According to this comic, Doc actually hired Marty as his assistant after Marty tried to steal audio equipment from his lab. It seems Marty got caught red-handed trying to lift a huge amp, and instead of calling the cops, Doc saw potential in the troubled kid. This is also why Marty uses that gigantic amp in the movie's opening scene, a small but subtle detail that connects the entire film universe. Let's take another look at what seems like a simple opening scene in Doc Brown's lab, and you'll realize that everything is foreshadowing. This is a great example of the subtlety in filmmaking. We can see a bunch of wall clocks recreating Harold Lloyd's classic clock-hanging scene, something Christopher Lloyd, Doc Brown himself, would later experience. There's a label "with the drunk" on a liquor bottle, hinting at Lorraine McFly's future drinking problem. A newspaper on the table talks about Doc's mansion burning down, explaining his financial troubles. Plus, there's the JVC camera Marty uses, and the news report about stolen plutonium. All cleverly planted details to foreshadow events that would happen later. This shows the filmmaker's subtlety and deep intention in embedding hidden details, making the movie richer with every rewatch. There's a deleted scene from Back to the Future showing Marty teaching George how to box, and George really struggled, trying to use his right hand. This detail reveals an interesting aspect of George. It implies that George was actually left-handed, but growing up in the 40s to 50s, he was forced to use his right hand, a common practice back then. This also explains why he wrote so sloppily and wasn't confident in many physical activities. When George finally stands up and delivers a knockout punch to Biff, he does it with his left hand, surprising everyone, even himself. This is a subtle hidden detail about George's character, showing his hidden potential when he's allowed to be himself. This is one of the smartest Easter eggs and meticulously executed details in the movie. The change in the mall's name. When Marty first travels back to 1985 and lands in a field, he accidentally runs over one of Farmer Peabody's 2 pine trees. This subtly changed the timeline. When Marty returns to 1985 at the end of the movie, the mall's name has quietly changed from Twin Pines Mall to Lone Pine Mall. To pull this off, the filmmakers created 2 different signs and swapped them between shots, showing their meticulous attention to even the smallest details during production. What do you think is the weirdest fact so far? Comment below, and don't forget to like and share this video to support the channel. One of Biff's silliest but incredibly funny and memorable lines. "You won, you know you want it. Make like a tree and get out of here," wasn't in the original script. The surprising truth is that Thomas F. Wilson, the actor who played Biff Tannen, ad-libbed a lot of his lines throughout filming.
Let him go, Biff. You're drunk.
Well, looky what we have here.
That broken tree metaphor line was just one of them. Other classic lines associated with Biff like "Butthead," "Hello, anybody home?" or "Think McFly think" were also partly ad-libbed or developed right there on set. This not only shows Thomas F. Wilson's excellent improvisation talent, but also created Biff's unique flavor and unforgettable humor, making him one of the most memorable villains on screen. There's a noticeable line in the movie. In 1955, Doc Brown refuses to believe Ronald Reagan could become president, asking skeptically, "The actor?" The surprising thing is that President Ronald Reagan, who was indeed an actor, actually loved this movie. He was reportedly said to have laughed louder than anyone else when watching that scene, and even asked for it to be rewound to watch again. The cultural impact of Back to the Future was further affirmed when, in his 1986 State of the Union address, Reagan directly quoted the movie. He said, "Where we're going, we don't need roads." One of Doc Brown's most iconic lines. This shows that the movie wasn't just entertainment, but also had a profound influence on popular culture and even politics. So, there you have it. We've just explored 20 weird and mind-blowing facts about Back to the Future, 1985. Hope you had your mind blown by these untold behind-the-scenes stories. From the script rejections to the difficulties on set and the hidden deep meanings, this movie truly is a treasure trove of secrets. If you have any other questions about Back to the Future or any other classic movie, don't hesitate to ask. Hit that like button and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on more awesome videos from Weird Film Facts.